It continues right now with our friend Andrij Dobriansky, who's here in the studio, represents the Ukrainian interests at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. It's always great to see you. Maybe we could start there and work our way out. I mean,
Sure.
you think an ironclad NATO-like security guarantee is a must, I would assume, if this is going to be signed.
What's being proposed is not including NATO into security guarantees for Ukraine, but having a NATO Article 5-like commitment from the United States. I think that makes less sense for the party involved, in that Ukraine has already been promised NATO membership, and it's actually stated in the Ukrainian constitution, one of the sticking points that Russia is demanding that Ukraine change its constitution. So as Europe has said from the beginning, you can't really dictate what NATO is going to do in the future. That's not, it has to be a unanimous consent. So just like there's no unanimous consent to accept Ukraine right now, and there is none, there's no unanimous consent to block Ukraine from going forward. So either of these proposals aren't going forward as far as changing the statute of NATO right now.
Okay, so on the big picture, we just had the plans up there, you know, on the screen with what Ukraine is saying, what Russia is saying, and then we can go on the map. I have the front lines map here that you and I have talked about so many times. Is this, there's been speculation from experts that this is actually where we end up. It's not going to be the proposed land here, which had a little bit more that Russia hasn't even captured on the battlefield, going over to them. And then finally, I'll just do a takeover comparison just so people get an idea of where we've come the last few years. But, you know, with a security guarantee, with, you know, maybe not as many limits on how many people Ukraine can have in its armed forces, for example, things like that. You go back in a de facto way to the frozen lines there, and maybe that's the deal?
I think what's happening from the European side, and you mentioned earlier that the Coalition of Willing was meeting. That's where the Europeans were. They were at the G20, not the United States for some reason this year. So there was a conversation down in South Africa. Now in Angola, there was a conversation with the Coalition of the Willing. They're trying to put a proposal on the table because they've always said, freeze the front lines where they are. What the Russians are trying to do with this proposal that they fed to Steve Witkoff to then give to the United States was, let's move the front lines even further. But that makes no sense, not just geographically, because you're talking about jumping over where there are already landmines and a no-go zone, right? But you're also talking about they want to occupy territories that would be a front line into a further invasion of Ukraine.
Right. Where do you think, you know, or where do people in Ukraine think Trump is on this right now? On your side?
Trump is all over the place, which is the problem. Trump is not having the conversations with Ukraine. He's tweeting at us. We saw the tweet about him sending people, but he's not the one who's been talking to Zelensky. That was J.D. Vance or Secretary Driscoll.
Right.
We saw him.
Driscoll's a very good friend of Vance, which is interesting that Driscoll got involved like this. So you think Vance is really...
It seems like it, but that's the question. I mean, I've been hearing from pundits that this is what Trump does. He shakes things up. He puts people in the room and bashes heads together. He's not in the room and not bashing anybody's head. So
and he says he won't be until the deal's either final or in the final stages with either Putin or Zelensky.
In which case, what is President Trump's role here? Is he actually doing something incrementally involved here? Because he was in the room with Zelensky when he told him that I believe that Ukraine can win back the territory, which was just, what, 8 weeks ago?
Right, September, right.
It's all over the place. And now we're hearing that he would have given the Tomahawks had not Witkoff arranged for a call with Putin. We're at a weird place right now where we're trying to understand where Trump is. You know, you're asking what the Ukrainians are understanding. They're not understanding what Trump says because it seems week by week we're getting a different message. What
is Zelensky, if he did get a chance to sit down with Trump, he came into Mar-a-Lago at the end of the week after Thanksgiving, and he had a chance to talk to him about it. So we keep reporting that the Ukrainians have agreed to kind of the broad strokes of
the essence of the deal.
But
except for,
well,
you mentioned NATO.
That's what I'm saying. There's exceptions. So what would Zelensky be pushing Trump on?
I think getting it past those couple of sticking points. So, yeah, you mentioned that the size of the Army, that's worked out. I think it's membership in different organizations. And the problem is, once again, we heard this plan announced. Marco Rubio had to fly to Geneva at a drop of a hat and get people together.
Kind of clean up a mess, it seems.
But who's not in the room are most of the European countries, including the proposal says that the planes are going to be stationed in Poland. Poland's nowhere to be found in this conversation, and yet we're putting this thing down on paper. So there's a confusion about who's actually at the table for this.
Well, I was saying Rubio, and I think this is probably what happened, but you never know, flew in to kind of clean up a mess that Driscoll and Witkoff and the rest of them created, or, to your earlier point, And I know a lot of people in kind of Trump land who would probably argue this, so this behind the scenes, they say, well, this is all part of the design. This is the art of the deal stuff. You're laughing, but this, well, you know, let's throw some stuff out there, and then we'll have Rubio go in and say this. I'm never sure if it's that planned.
You know, the problem is that you need to have diplomats in the room and the lawyers in the room to work out the details. So Trump may say that he's working on Nobel Peace Prize stuff, but in the end, it's actual diplomats who are writing law. You can't change Ukraine's constitution unless everybody votes for it. You can't change the NATO constitution unless all the members of NATO do it. You can't change American law without getting Congress involved. And the Ukraine Freedom Support Act passed in 2014. John McCain, who's saying, Obama, you got to send them more of the blankets. They passed a law that said it is United States policy not to recognize any occupied territories.
Right.
And it's American policy to help Ukraine get those territories back. Who is the congressman and senator who says, I have a new law that we need to change that?
Well, you need to have Congress or the state, you know, the United States Senate involved. We were talking about this yesterday with General Clark. You know, get a treaty in place.
Yes.
Because otherwise, how are you going to enforce it with another president? And, you know, nobody trusts Putin to begin with.
And that's where art of the deal doesn't work. You need lawyers in the room to actually make the work happen. So I'm glad that Rubio showed up. You had lawyers and diplomats and a general from the other side of Ukraine. You had Rubio in the room with people who were seriously talking about diplomacy instead of let's throw it all up and make a handshake deal, because that's not going to work. At some point, somebody's going to have to understand where the border ends.
All this said, where are you on the spectrum, optimism, pessimism right now?
I think we were in a very dangerous place last couple of days. When Trump came out on the way to the airport and said that he made this not his final offer, then everything changed. Because now we know that there is no deadline. If that's not his final offer.
Yeah, there's no Thanksgiving deadline.
No, exactly.
Right, so that's off the table. 28's 19. Some of the worst stuff that was real pro-Russian is off the table too, right? So you would say it's moving in...
It's moving in the right direction, and we're talking diplomatically.
Right.
We're talking with serious people in the room, diplomats to diplomats, and they're trying to work it out. This stuff with Witkoff trying to call people and make a deal, that's not how this ends. It ends with people in a room signing a piece of paper and maybe Congress getting involved.
Andrij, thank you as always. Andrij Dobriansky on the Ukrainian side of things.